All right. The Republican effort to rein in this out-of-control spending from Washington is spot on as far as being on target with principle, but it's also spot on as it relates to what we all are going to leave our children and our grandchildren as it relates to national debt and the consequences of that. But what would a debt ceiling default mean to average working Americans right now? Well, joining me to discuss this is Dr. Dave Brat. He is a former member of Congress that I had the honor to serve with. He's now the Dean of the School of Business at Liberty University. Dr. Brat, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Reverend Congressman Heiss, great to be on with you, brother.
Well, it's great to see you. You're looking great as always. All right, listen, we've got a couple of minutes, and if I could, I'd love for you, if you would, to just hold over in our next break, because we're running short on time. But break this down in simple terms. Average working Americans, what is to be expected if we have a default?
Yeah, well, I'll get into it in the longer segment. It's impossible to default. We have way more money. A default means you default on the Treasury bond, on the U.S. Treasury bond. If we ever defaulted on the U.S. Treasury, we'd all be fishing under a bridge with Frodo. It would be the end of Western civilization. So that's not even in play. The left and Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, is playing word games here. What she's talking about is paying all the bills for all Democratic spending. That may not happen. And that's not a big deal. You just prioritize your spending in order. But we have plenty of money to pay off any interest on the debt in treasuries. And so the American Treasury holder doesn't need to be worried about that. And so the big two things you'll never hear from the mainstream media is the Republicans passed a bill. And so people on the left in the House are squabbling. Sorry, the House passed a bill. And then Treasury Secretary Yellen says she sent her memos to Congress. Again, misleading language. She's aiming at the House. The Senate hasn't done its homework. They have no numbers. They have no receipts. They don't have a budget plan. And so all the leverage is on the Republican side right now. And these views are just my own, but I think they're correct. I think you've been there and you know how it works too. We finally have all the leverage because the Democrats want to do the spending, and we got a debt ceiling increase on our side to work with. And so the second piece you'll never hear in the mainstream media is the baseline argument here, and this is CBO numbers, right? Congressional Budget Office, $50 trillion in debt in this budget cycle. In the 10-year window, we'll have $50 trillion in debt to hand off to the kids in 10 years. The interest rate now is 5%. 5% interest rates on $50 trillion is $2.5 trillion a year just in interest payments. You don't get anything for that. That's three times the military budget right now, which is $800 billion or verging on $1 trillion, right? So just the interest payments. So this makes, when we were back in, I mean, we were only dealing with $1 trillion deficits. I mean, I'm kind of joking, right? But now there are $2 trillion deficits for the next 10 years around the necks of the kids. Everybody knows this is split, but the mainstream press will not cover any of this. So the Republicans just need to hold strong, and they have the moral high ground for a change. Just tell the American people the basic facts, and you win in 30 seconds.
Well, and that's happening, and I don't know that I've ever seen a time where the Republicans appear, at least, and I think it's in reality they're unified right now, and they, like you said, they've got all the leverage to accomplish what needs to happen. And this could be historic. And I do want to come back and talk more about this, because literally in the hands of the Republicans right now is the tool to roll back out of control federal spending. We've got about 15 seconds before we take off, but we'll be back after the break. But do you see this moving? You think the Republicans are going to hold together?
Yeah, if they do not, they will cease to be a party, right? You and I have been with this. We're holding 5 aces, right? We got 4 aces and a wild card. I mean, it's all you could ever hope for.
Let me go back to my first question, and your point well taken. The default is not the proper word. That's the word that is used. But still, if we don't make a deal and the government shuts down, whatever terminology we want to use here, that is going to have an economic impact on people's lives, will it not? And potentially the global economy as well, if Congress isn't able to come through.
Yeah, and in my view, I have a PhD in economics, and economics is about the study of information, and prices convey information. And so if Congress defaults on the total spending, right, we're 50 trillion in debt in 10 years. Russ Vought, who was the former head of OMB, came out with a budget that saved $17 trillion. That would keep us at 33 trillion, which is currently where we stand. That didn't have enough traction. So now our friends, the Freedom Caucus, who are being called, every nasty word there is, MAGA, Republicans, extremists, they want to trim 4 trillion off of the 50 trillion in debt. That still leaves us with 46 trillion in debt, right? So it's an easy case to make to the American people. And I told you just what the interest on the debt is. And so if we can't make our last stand on this one, we got no stand to make because it does matter. So financial markets, right? The American consumer right now is in $17 trillion in debt, consumers. $1 trillion in credit card debt, $1.5 trillion in college loan debt. We're in debt up to our eyeballs. We got a recession coming up, another financial crisis caused by the Federal Reserve for their mismanagement, holding the interest rate at 0% for a decade. Everybody knows you won't find a CEO that won't say we're not going to be in a recession coming up and that the Federal Reserve caused it. So now is the time to stand up. You're going to default, right, on the debt. The Federal Reserve is planning, they're in a tough bind, but they basically want inflation so they can pay the debt back with cheaper dollars.
Right.
And so that's where we stand. We're going to default on the total spending package, 50 trillion. You cannot do it. There's no way, right? So it's either you do it now in the public view when we have the leverage, or the Democrats are way better at messaging. You know that, right? They clobbered us every time. They own the press. And so it's a hard fight. So you better fight now while we got the leverage.
It's we're talking numbers that are astronomical that no one can even imagine what we're talking about. Listen, I just got word that Dr. Murphy is going to be able to join us by phone. So I've only got a couple minutes left for him. But let me ask you, Dr. Brat, your feelings. How is this going to end up? Or do you think they're going to reach a deal, or what do you anticipate happening real quickly?
Well, you and I and the Freedom Caucus would agree we should hold strong. We're only saving 4 trillion out of 50 trillion in debt. Our team passed a bill. The Senate has not. Everything is on our side. Biden said, I'm not going to negotiate. I don't care. And thumb just knows at the whole thing. So, and these views are just my own, but we need to hold strong. It's time to take care of the American people and the kids. The liberals say they care about the kids. 50 trillion in debt means otherwise. They do not care about the kids.
Dr. Dave Brat, great to see you, my friend. Thank you for joining us on Washington
God bless
Watch.
You, brother. You're great.
Likewise.
Keep it up.